Hey guys, so today I'm here with the Rugged Ridge HD Stubby front bumper fitting all 2018 and newer JL Wranglers. So if you're shopping around for a stubby front bumper and you're looking for something that's very functional as well as going to provide a very off-road and aggressive look to the front end of your Jeep, then this option by Rugged Ridge is going to be a great choice to look at. So this stubby design is going to allow a lot of room on the sides for larger wheels and tires as well as some better approach angles off-road, perfect for that Jeep owner that's looking for some better performance while they're out on the trail, and a stubby front bumper will definitely allow that. Not to mention, this is also going to be very functional. You're getting multiple recovery points on this front bumper as well as jack points if you do get into a sticky situation while you're out on the trail. Not only is it going to have very functional features packed into this small design, but it is going to provide some heavy-duty front end protection with the steel construction, and you are able to build off of this front bumper and add grille protection down the line. As far as price goes, this is going to be pretty averagely priced for a stubby front bumper, but when we're taking a look at bumpers as a whole, this will be a pretty affordable option at roughly $450. Now, because of the small compact design, that's really where you're getting that affordability aspect, but in my personal opinion, I think that this is at a really good price point considering that what you're getting with this front bumper. Now, if we take a look at some of the less expensive choices, you'll usually see that they have a more basic design in compared to this option. Now with this, you're getting a recessed winch plate for a little bit of extra protection. You're getting options as far as recovery points go, and you're even getting the option to mount up a stinger or a bull bar in the future, which I personally like because you can set this up to however you want. Not to mention, you're also getting those jacking points and a little bit of extra protection for those factory fog lights. So with this bumper, you're getting a lot of functionality as well as options in comparison to the lesser expensive choices. Now on the flip side of that, those more expensive options are usually going to be for mid-width, standard width, or full width designs, which won't allow as much articulation or room on the sides, but will provide a little bit more protection. Now, my personal opinion, I think if you're looking for a front bumper that's going to increase your trail performance while also being very functional and very stylish for the front end of your Wrangler, then this is going to be a great choice to take a look at. So install is going to be a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, probably taking you about 2 hours to get the job done with some very basic hand tools. So speaking of the install, let's jump into that now. Tools that I use for my install are an impact wrench, a 19mm, 18mm, 13mm, and 7mm deep socket, 16mm shallow socket, T20 torque socket, a 3-inch and 10-inch extension, a trim removal tool, 3/8" drive and 1/4" drive ratchet, and a flathead screwdriver. So our first step to removing our bumper is removing the upper splash shield. Now it's held in by a couple of clips as well as 2 screws. So you are going to need a flathead screwdriver as well as a trim removal tool and a 7mm socket. So like I said, there are a couple of clips holding this splash shield in. I'm just going to remove them with a flathead screwdriver. Now if they are giving you a little bit of trouble, you can use a trim removal tool in order to get these out, but they should come out pretty easily. So this one's giving me a little bit of trouble. I'm just going to grab a removal tool, pop that one out. And then on each corner, there are 2 screws holding this in. We can remove those and fully remove our splash guard. So on the back side of either corner, you're going to have a 7mm screw. I'm going to use a 7mm deep socket and a 1/4" drive ratchet to remove that. You're going to have one on either side. After that's removed, we can repeat that on the other side and then remove our splash guard. After we're done with the upper splash guard, we're going to move to the lower one. There's 2 screws in the back that are holding it on. I'm going to use a 7mm socket to remove those 2 screws, and then we can remove the clips at the front that are holding the rest of the lower splash guard in. So now what we can do is remove the clips that are holding in the front of our splash guard. I'm going to take a trim removal tool and wiggle those out. Make sure you have a grip on the splash guard when you get to the last clip. And then once all of the clips at the front are out, we'll be able to fully remove the guard. What we can do next is remove the 2 bolts that are holding in our skid plate. So we can remove the skid plate, get it out of the way so we can access the studs in the back of our bumper. I'm using a 16mm socket to remove those 2 bolts. After those are removed, we can just give a little tap on the bottom and that will push it out of place. There are 2 tabs holding it into our lower frame horns. What we can do now is disconnect our fog light wiring harness. After this is removed, what we can do is start removing the nuts that are holding on our bumper. There are studs going through our frame horn and we want to make sure that all of that hardware is removed. Then we'll be able to remove our front bumper. I'm going to use an 18mm deep socket to remove the hardware on the studs on our front bumper. I'm going to start with our passenger side. Also using an impact wrench to make it a little bit easier. So just like on the outside, there is also going to be hardware on the inside. I'm going to use that same 18mm socket to remove the inside hardware. And we can repeat that for the other side. After all of our hardware is disconnected, we can take off our front bumper. May have to give it a good wiggle just to loosen up the studs from the frame. So what we can do next is remove our fog lights, but first we have to remove our trim pieces on the outer sides that are covering up our fog lights. You're gonna need that 7mm socket, and you can either use a hand ratchet and an extension to clear the edges of the trim piece here, or I'm just gonna use my impact. So there are a number of screws holding this in on the outer perimeter, attaching it to the bumper. Just gonna remove all of those. It is a little bit easier and faster to do it with an impact just because these are pretty long screws. So once these are all removed, what we can do is pop this off and that will expose our fog light. We can unplug it. Now we can remove our fog light using a T20 Torx bit. I'm gonna use a Torx socket in my impact wrench. There should be 3, we only have 2 installed. We're missing 1, but once those 3 are removed, we can remove our fog light and repeat that same process on the other side. Next, we have to free up our wiring harness. We will have to swap this over to our new bumper. So what we're gonna do is remove this metal crash bar from the plastic bumper piece using a 13mm socket. This may be different on a couple of different models. You may have to remove a number of screws from the outside and separate the bumper, but you can just remove this crash bar to expose the wiring harness that's underneath. I'm using a 13mm socket to remove the 4 bolts that are holding in the crash bar. Once those are removed, what we can do is lift up our crash bar, and that will expose our wiring harness, so we can grab a trim removal tool and just pop all of those clips out. once that's removed, we can move our stock bumper aside and work on our new one. So before we swap over our factory fog lights into our new bumper, I wanted to stop down and tell you guys a little bit more about this new front bumper and what benefits that you're gonna get out of this in comparison to your factory setup. Now, right off the bat, you can tell that your factory front bumper is going to be a standard width, and it's also going to have a plastic construction with a standard steel crash bar in the back. Now that's going to give you some decent protection to the front end of your tires as well as your fenders as far as the width goes, but that plastic material will not be able to hold up for any hard hits, especially when you're out on the trail. When moving over to this rugged ridge option, this will be a stubby front bumper, allowing a lot of room on the sides for larger wheels and tires, as well as better approach angles while you're out on the trail, which will boost your trail performance. And it's going to be made of a steel plate construction, so if you do take a hit to this front bumper, it will be able to hold up and it will be able to save that front end. Now the thing about this front bumper is the fact that this is not going to come with a striker or a bull bar, which does separate itself from some other options on the page. However, you do have the option to add one in the future. There are mounting points on this, and that's not the case with your factory front bumper. You don't really get that option as far as any grille protection. Now there are a couple of features that will bump up the functionality on the front end of your Wrangler, including the recovery points on this front bumper. On each welded D-ring mount or welded tow hook on the front of this stubby front bumper, there are going to be 2 mounting holes which will give you the option on what angle or what recovery point that you want to use if you do get into a sticky situation on the trail. And not to mention, you are keeping those tow hooks, so you are getting an option as far as recovery goes. Now on the factory front bumper, you can tell that you do get those factory tow hooks. However, you're not going to have a solid recovery point, so moving over to this one is going to be a little bit safer and a little bit more efficient. And on the topic of recovery, you also are getting a winch plate integrated into the front bumper, capable of holding a winch with up to a 12,000-pound pulling capacity. What I do really like about this bumper is the fact that we are able to keep our factory fog lights, whether they be the LED fog lights or the factory incandescent ones, and this is also going to integrate some protection. So on the front of the bumper here on each of the fog light mounting locations, you are getting 2 bars, which will help out with some extra protection to your fog lights. They are going to be a little bit recessed, so those are going to be perfect for any obstacles or any brush on the trail, preventing any cracking or damage to your actual fog light. Not to mention, you are getting 2 jacking points on the front here. So again, if you do get into a sticky situation, this is going to be a very functional bumper that will get you out of that sticky situation. So enough about these 2 bumpers side by side. Let's go ahead and swap over our fog lights. What we can do next is swap over our factory fog lights. Now it will depend on if you have a factory incandescent or a factory LED. Now, if you have a factory LED, you won't necessarily need the brackets that are provided. The factory incandescent has a bracket on the back, which does have a step to the light housing itself. So that's where the brackets come in. But if you have a factory LED, you can mount them right up with the provided carriage bolts. Now, for the factory incandescent, what we're going to do is press down on each of these tabs and wiggle off this back bracket here. So there's tabs on either side of these mounts. I'm just pressing them down and pushing up with the back of my hand. They're pretty easy to take off. Do that for one. And then what we can do is line up our new bracket. This has mounting locations for our bumper. We can press that on into place, and these will hold it in place, so we can do the same thing for the other light. All right, so once those brackets are on, what we can do is line these up and mount them into our bumper. Like I said, you will have provided carriage bolts. We're going to put them through the back. They're going to hold themselves in place, and then we're going to grab our flat washer, lock washer, and nut. And thread that on. So for the factory incandescent, you're going to have 3 mounting locations. For the factory LED, you're going to have 4 mounting locations, or mounting points, should I say. So once those are all in place, we can tighten them up with a 7mm socket. I'm using a deep socket. For the inner one, you are going to have a winch blade here, so you will need a hand ratchet. Then we can repeat that on the other side. Now, if you're not installing the striker bar or the bull bar at this time, you are provided with some little grommets that we can put in place just to make the bumper look a little bit more complete. So while we're still on the table, I did want to mention you are going to have pre-installed hardware within the bumper. So there are going to be 2 welded nut plates as well as 2 welded stud plates in the back of the mounting location. Now those are going to be held in by plastic tabs. If they are not currently installed, I would install them at this point. All you have to do is just thread the plastic tab on. That will keep the stud and the plate in place, so when we go and mount it up, they will not be wiggling around. So after everything's complete on the table, we're ready to mount up our front bumper. So now we're ready to mount up our bumper. I have it sitting on my lap just so I can guide it in. If you have a friend on hand, that would probably be the best situation. So while we're here, I'm gonna secure the inside with a lock washer, flat washer, and nut, just to make sure that the bumper is not going anywhere. And we can even grab our provided bolt and thread that through. Now we want to make sure that everything's loosely installed. So once the inside is secure, we can move to the outside and secure the outer studs. So it looks like I have to pull this one through, which what we can do, if you have a thread through it, you can grab a nut and then tighten it up, and it should pull that stud plate through, and then we can go back and put the lock washers and flat washers on. So now that all of the hardware is loosely installed, if you are installing a winch, I would recommend to do it now so you can get it fitted properly. However, we are not installing a winch, so I'm going to tighten everything down with a 19mm socket. And for the outsides here with these recessed edges, I am going to be using a 10-inch extension. So like I said, if the studs are not pulling through right away, what you can do is just try to thread a nut on, and you should be able to pull them through. Now we can repeat that process for all of the studs as well as the bolts in the inside of the frame horn. So I'm just using a 3-inch extension for the inside here. If you can hand thread them in all the way, I recommend to do that first. So then we can tighten them all up with that 19mm socket. I'm also using a 3-inch extension to give myself a little bit of room. However, you won't need that 10-inch extension for these inside bolts and nuts. So what we can do while we're over here is plug in our fog light harness, the main harness up at the top, or the main plug up at the top. So we will have to pull this wiring harness over the frame on the inside so we can access the fog lights. What we can do at this point, now that our bumper is tightened down, is plug in our fog light. This is our main wiring harness. Then we can plug in the smaller harness on the actual back of the fog light. You'll hear a little bit of a click. Then what we can do is pass this either through or below our winch plate, depending on if you're mounting up a winch. Plug in the other one. And then our last step is just to tie up this extra wire, just because this is a stubby front bumper and we don't need all of this extra wiring harness. So we'll zip tie that up and then you'll be all set to go. So that's gonna wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe, and for more videos and products like this, always keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.